Adaaaaaa. You're watching the #1 podcast in the YouTube wrestling community, and I'm your host, Sean Paul Leek. This is Rope Break. Family, hope you're all doing well. Tuesday morning is here again, so you know what that means. It is the start of the week for Rope Break, and of course, we kick it off with everybody's favorite 3-hour show, Monday Night Raw. Before we get into it, we want to remind you guys, check out tons of videos we have last week. We gave you Monday, Tuesday, or Sunday, and Monday. Check everything out, because before we started here on Tuesday, we have the Broken Skull Sessions Part 2, the last round with Stone Cold and The Undertaker. We have our thoughts on that. Check that out. And, of course, we have soccer videos and all the other videos, for the wrestling week. So make sure you check them out. But Monday Night Raw, let's get into it. Build for TLC. Decent show. I mean, I didn't hate a lot of it, and I didn't love a lot of it, but most of it, if I had to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, I would give it a thumbs up. Maybe I'm being a little bit more lenient. Maybe I'm being a little bit more, optimistic. But I like a lot of the storylines and the angles, and we're seeing a lot of guys featured in a lot of prominent storylines that we can see. Some of them are deserving, other ones not so much. But let's get into it. So Raw opens up with a moment of bliss, and the guest is Randy Orton. So clearly, like I said last week, the feud is the Fiend, Randy Orton, and that's definitely apparent here with this moment of bliss, because Bliss, Orton enters the ring, and Bliss is like, oh, somebody's in a foul mood. So obviously Randy's pissed coming in here, and then Bliss throws a replay of last week's triple threat match where we see the lights go out, and Orton, and the Fiend cost him the match. So obviously, like I said, really setting up that feud. Then Bliss teases as to why the Fiend may have cost Orton his match, hinting on Orton and why it's past. And then Orton touches on he and Bray's past, and he notes that he hasn't met the Fiend before, but that Wyatt wears his pain on his sleeve, while Orton suppresses his pain in order to blend in. And then Orton notes that he hears voices, as does the Fiend, but the voices that the Fiend hears are mine. So he's trying to say he's in the Fiend's head. And then Bliss says that that's not what the Fiend told her, but Orton interrupts, saying that he found what Bray Wyatt's vulnerability is, and he burned it to the ground. Orton adds that he needs to find the Fiend's weakness, and then he looks right at Bliss, and he says he found the Fiend's weakness. So what did I already say a couple weeks ago? I said I like this with, how we saw Bray was overly protective of Alexa Bliss. Randy Orton noticed that the same thing too. He must watch Rope Break, and now he can go after her, because that would be how do you make the Fiend vulnerable? He has a weakness. The weakness is Alexa Bliss. So then Bliss asks that if the voices in Orton's head are telling him, or if they're telling him lies. Bliss goes on and says who's manipulating who, and then the pair stand face to face in the middle of the ring, and the lights go out. And then when the lights come back on, Randy Orton's like holding her, like they just got married, like, he's holding her. And then the Fiend, he crawls towards her, and then Orton kind of just like throws her to the Fiend, and then he rolls out of the ring and says, who's laughing now, with a smirk on his face, because it definitely appears that he has found the Fiend's weakness. Because you saw he didn't just like throw Alexa to the ground and go after Orton. He held on to her and everything. So this was good. I like this opening segment, and this is a legit storyline because it's, has a backstory to it. The Fiend's going after everybody in his past, and Randy Orton is one of those people. So then we get the announce desk. They're kind of all shook. They're like, oh my God, this is crazy. We don't know what's going on here. But then they say, oh yeah, Jeff Hardy and Elias, they talk about their feud involving all the guitar shots and everything. And then the pair will settle things once and for all in a Symphony of Destruction match, which I believe we saw Elias and Braun Strowman in. So, this isn't a new gimmick or new, match type here. So we go right into this match. And I mean, this was okay. This was okay because it was Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy did a lot of his shit, the typical Jeff Hardy stuff that we all know and love. And, this meshes well with Elias because Jeff is so good in a match where it's like, where you have Elias is the stronger wrestler, then the match isn't going to turn out too well. That's why people praised Elias's feud with Seth Rollins, because, back a couple years ago, because Rollins is so good, he made Elias even better. I feel like Jeff does that as well. But at the end of this thing, Elias goes to hit Hardy with the butt end of the guitar that was smashed just seconds ago. But Hardy then ducks and hits Elias with a bunch of wiring, and then the amp explodes. So like he had like the guitar, like, just, where like the strings are and everything. And he went to like almost stab Hardy with it. And then Jeff moved out of the way and he stabbed into a speaker, and then it like electrocuted him, which, I mean, I guess it could electrocute through like the metal strings, but it's like it's wood, like the handle of the guitar is wood. So I don't know how that would electrocute him, but hey, whatever, it's wrestling. I don't know why I'm questioning logic here. But then Hardy hits Elias with a bassoon, and then he puts him on a table and he puts a bunch of string instruments and stuff on top. He swantons, boom, 1, 2, 3, the match is over. Now, the thing about the swanton is he didn't do it like leading up to the ramp, or he didn't do it at the announce desk or in the ring. It was between like at the ring steps, that little corner. So not much room. When he did the swanton, Elias took a bad bump. Jeff also took a bad bump, and he hit his neck on the ring steps. The report is that Jeff says he's good. His neck's like, it's not like broken or anything like that. So Jeff's good. Elias, they said they didn't hear anything on him, but like if they didn't hear anything, sometimes that's good. That means, that he's not injured or anything. So hopefully those two guys are good. I would hate to see if any of them were injured for a match like this on a Monday Night Raw, where no one will be talking about this in a week from now. So then back, we see Keith Lee. He's prepping for this triple threat match tonight. Riddle shows up. He's hyping up the number 1 contenders match. Keeps going on and on. He's rambling about stuff. And then Keith Lee's just like gone. He's like, huh? Where'd you go, bro? So like, it's just kind of like people are getting annoyed with Matt Riddle, maybe not taking him seriously. So, that was what it was. I could have done without that. Like I said, it was what it was. Then back live, we get Ricochet versus Slapjack. But first, there's a replay of Ali beating Ricochet from 3 weeks ago. And then we go back, and Ali in Retribution. Ali says that just like Ricochet, promises that were made to him turned into lies, and dreams turned into nightmares. Why can't you see what I see? Slapjack then speaks, saying that while the rest of the world rejected him, Ali saw him for who he was. Ali says tonight Slapjack will make Ricochet pay for not joining them. So Ricochet enters the ring, and as this is happening, we get a pre-tape of him cutting a promo saying that in order to show Ali, to show that Ali is going about things the wrong way, he needs to prove that he's a better wrestler. So, I don't know, like I said, I like this storyline, but I feel like they're not pushing it enough. And it's one of those things where like the storyline's barely hanging on week by week by week. So we'll see. I don't know. I like all the guys involved. I think they're all good wrestlers, but the storyline just really isn't getting that push that I think it, could deserve to help it get over. But Ricochet versus Slapjack was a pretty decent match. Slapjack is a good wrestler. Ricochet obviously is very good as well. Both guys have really good styles. They mesh well together. But this obviously, Ali was out there and everything, so this wasn't going to end legit. Because Slapjack takes advantage of the distraction from Ali with a roll-up for a 2 count. But then everything starts breaking down at this point, and chaos ensues on the outside. Slapjack lands kind of like a modified back suplex, again off the distraction for the 1, 2, 3. So he wins this thing, and that pretty much means that this feud's going to continue, which, like I said, I like it. I like all the guys involved, but I feel like nobody who matters, like management, Vince McMahon, all of them, really like this storyline, especially what we saw later in the night. I don't see much for Retribution. And then we get a replay of Drew McIntyre beating Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania. And he'll be live for an exclusive interview later. And then when we come back from commercial, it's Miz TV. And he says that he was able to make some phone calls, and he got an exclusive interview with Sheamus, who's in action later tonight, teaming with Drew McIntyre against The Miz and Morrison. So then Sheamus comes out, and there's a little bit of banter back and forth. Miz finally gets to the point, and he brings up Drew McIntyre. And Sheamus is like, oh, okay, good, finally. Because they were like, oh, how's your Thanksgiving? Do you eat turkey right away, or do you go for the sides? And he's like, speaking of sides, I'm going to slap you up the side of the face if you don't get to the point of this. Then they mention Drew, and he's like, yep, there it is. So they're like, oh, you did all this stuff for Drew, and he didn't do anything for you. What's you got him his family chest and all this stuff, and there was nothing in return. Sheamus says that it was Drew's family chest and that he doesn't need anything in return, as the pair goes way back. Miz tells Sheamus that Drew should have given him a title shot since they're best friends, and he adds that he would give Morrison the first shot if he was champ. Miz goes on trying to get Sheamus to turn on his partner tonight so that he can cash in the Money in the Bank. Sheamus isn't having it. Miz gets serious, asking him when was the last time that he held the WWE Championship, mocking how short his title run from 5 years ago was. Sheamus stands up. He's pissed off. And then he throws shots at Miz and Morrison. Miz uses the briefcase to bring down Sheamus, hitting him twice in the back. So this was good. I like the Miz when he's fired up like this. Like when him and Morrison do that little annoying shtick. I mean, it's funny, and I understand, like, the show is, aimed towards, like, younger audiences as well. So, you want to have a little bit of funny stuff in there for them. But when Miz turns it on, he's a legit promo. He's in the top 10, I would say, in WWE. When he turns it on, he can turn it on. Then we get a transition to Lana's feud with Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler. We get a replay of the tag match between the three and Asuka from last week. Lana's in the back now with Asuka, who's talking to her in Japanese. And then the pair take on Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler in a rematch. And then we see from the heels, they're interviewed prior to entering the ring, and they're asked about last week and their first loss as a team. Jax says that the loss was a fluke, but Baszler says that she was too busy worrying about Asuka, while Jax failed to put Lana through the table. Jax reminds Baszler that she took the pinfall loss, and a bit of disarray among the pair, who are dedicated to getting back together on the same page tonight. So we get this rematch, and I mean, this again was the same thing that we saw last week. Or like the same thing I said about the Keith Lee, Matt Riddle thing. It was what it was. I feel like they don't have plans for Asuka because there's no real woman built up. Like I said, I wanted it to be Shayna Baszler. That's what I was hoping for. It doesn't seem like they're really doing anything like that. We haven't seen Nikki Cross again, so she's probably going to be out for a while, kind of selling the thing from Alexa Bliss. So who knows? But Asuka in a tag team with Lana. You know what I mean? Like, didn't we just see this with the Kabuki Warriors? Kairi Sane is 1,000 times better than Lana. I don't know what this is, but at the end of this thing, Shayna tagged in, but Lana is able to get Asuka, who runs wild with some hip attacks, and then Asuka goes for a Shining Wizard, but Baszler evades, and then both women with high kicks land. Asuka is able to get a tag into Lana. She goes for a crossbody, but Baszler counters into the Kirifuda clutch, and as Lana is fading, Asuka lands. I think she hit like a knee strike. Or maybe, I think it was a knee strike. I don't think it was another hip attack, but she hit some sort of like Shining Wizard kick or something onto Shayna Baszler, and then Lana's able to roll over and pin her for the 1-2-3. So, I mean, this is going to just continue the feud. But like I said, do I really want to see this team of Asuka and Lana beating them for the tag team championships? No, to me, that's so stupid, but who knows, it's WWE, and they don't really care about the women's division unless it's Becky Lynch or Charlotte Flair. So then we get back, and where Sheamus is nursing the attack from earlier, Drew arrives and pokes fun at him. Sheamus says if the roles were reversed, I would do the same thing. And it's all fun and games as the pair prep for their tag team match later. Because he's like, oh, you got your ass kicked, but come on, that must have been pretty fun slapping the two of them up. And Sheamus is like, yeah, you're right. And they start laughing, and he's like, well, how come you didn't come and help me? And he's like, well, he's like, oh, I would let you out there too. So they're kind of joking back and forth. So you see there's no disarray. There's no like dissension between these two. And then we get to the ring, the New Day, and they're in action next against the Hurt Business. So back live, Kofi announces that Xavier Woods has been announced as the new host of G4. Woods thanks all of his fans. In an effort to practice his hosting, he gives a rundown of the Hurt Business failing to secure the tag titles 3 times. Wood throws up a replay from 2 weeks ago, commenting the finish with the New Day retaining the belts. He does the same for last week's match. The Hurt Business have heard enough, and they enter. Again, this was just really cringy by the New Day. I don't know what it is. These guys are hell of wrestlers. Big E's not too bad on the mic when he's not being like super overly top goofy, big sweaty meat man or whatever he says. But this here is just Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston need to stop talking. They just need to cut their mics because they're hell of wrestlers, but man, I cannot stand them on the mic. So thankfully, MVP took over, and he says the pair are in need of a wake-up call, saying that the team's math is off and that they're 2-2 after the ref raised their hands following the count-out win. MVP says that their title reign will soon end as a distant dream. Shelton adds that the hype from MVP and Cedric closes by saying that Woods' luck is about to run out, and that the G4 gig you got, I hope it's a dream come true because this is about to be your nightmare. Cedric attacks Xavier Woods from behind prior to their singles match, and we get things rolling after the commercial break. So again, like I said, the New Day, hell, like, amazing wrestlers. This match was really good. I love Cedric Alexander as well. This thing was fantastic. If they would just amp up the seriousness, especially being in a feud with the Hurt Business. You think, okay, maybe we'll turn it from G-rated to PG. Maybe we'll be a little bit more, a little bit more aggressive. No, why would you do that? But this was really good. At the end of the thing, Wood goes for a power bomb, but Cedric reverses it into a brain buster for a close two count. Then both men are fighting near the apron. Woods is thrown to the outside as Cedric goes for a suicide dive, but Wood spots it and then throws Cedric into the barricade. But both men get back in the ring at a count of 8. Cedric is up first. He hits the lumbar check for the 1, 2, 3. So I was really happy with this outcome. Hopefully this means the feud continues. I've been saying it for the past 2-3 weeks now. These two teams are going to meet at TLC, and if you don't do the title change there, the Hurt Business is dead, especially with what I think they're going to be doing with the United States Championship. You need to, if you're going to take that gold away from this group, you need to add the tag team gold. So hopefully I'm right here. And then we get another replay of AJ beating Orton after distraction from the Fiend to the back where AJ Styles is with his bodyguard, Omos. They finally gave him a name, at least one that I could pronounce it because I couldn't say his last name. I'm sorry, man. But, the last name was way too crazy for me. So, Omos. I like that. Then Riddle shows up. He's all laid back with AJ. He reminds him how serious this match is. He said, "You better hop out of the way, Skipper, because I'm going to get this carrot tonight." AJ's like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Omos says, "Oh, his pet rabbit, his name's Skipper." He's like, "Well, how the hell do you know that?" And then he pretty much compares AJ to his rabbit. He's like, "Oh, well, you're both, you both like to hop around. You both got nice, hair and all this stuff." And AJ's like, "Okay, like you're pissing me off." And, so he leaves. Again, we saw this with Keith Lee. Now we saw this here with Riddle. And, with AJ Styles. So, maybe, who knows? This, again, was what it was. They're trying to get Riddle over to be funny. They do this one more time tonight. And I only thought the third one was good. But this was okay, just mostly for Omos and AJ's interaction. So then back to the ring for the number 1 contender to sudden death triple threat. And Lee's out first, and AJ and Riddle enter after the break. So this was really good as well. This, to me, was the match of the night. Keith Lee dominated this thing. He looked really good. AJ actually looked the weakest in this, I want to say, until about the end of the match. It was mostly Keith Lee and Riddle, which is why I said the show, I kind of gave this a pass just because, okay, we're seeing these new stars look really good. It's not like, oh, Riddle was on SmackDown, then drafted a Raw. They drop his first name, and it's like, oh, my God, he's finished. No, he's looking good here, especially with what I think they're going to do with him after this. Keith Lee didn't win, and, it looks a little discerning because I thought, okay, maybe he's going to go after Lashley. That's not the case. At least that's not how it looks now. So I don't really know what they're going to do. I'm going to speculate a little bit later on something that might happen, but I could be way out in left field. But this was really good. And it went through a commercial break, so obviously they gave this match some time. But at the end of this thing, Lee goes for a suplex on the Riddle. He lands on his feet. The pair trade some shots. Riddle down in Keith Lee with a running knee. But then out of nowhere, AJ comes in, hits a phenomenal forearm. Like I said, he really didn't do much in this match. AJ, he kind of just struck when opportunity was there, but it was the two younger guys who really dominated and shined in this thing. But this is a match at TLC that Braun Strowman was supposed to be in. He was injured. He can't make the match. So now this was the backup plan. So what does that tell you? If this was the backup plan, either Strowman was going to interfere in this match and cause complete chaos, or this match was going to be next week, and then Strowman was going to be at the pay-per-view. So if that's the case, it really doesn't matter who won this match because they weren't going to put it on Drew. They weren't going to have Strowman beat Drew. This was just going to be a defense for Drew, from TLC going into the Royal Rumble. So it didn't really matter who was going to win. And we could have saw Keith Lee. We could have saw Matt Riddle. Some people, they're of the mindset where they don't want to see a guy like that challenge unless he's going to win. Because if he loses, then it's like, oh, okay. Like, we saw how many times we see Matt Riddle lose for the NXT championship, obviously on NXT. So we don't want to keep seeing this guy challenge and lose. And Keith Lee, as legit as he was in NXT, I kind of feel the same way. So AJ Styles, he wins this match with a phenomenal forearm. I feel if he challenges Drew and loses, it doesn't hurt him too much because he's AJ Styles. And like we said in the Broken Skull Sessions thing, part 2, Stone Cold, The Undertaker, so many others, and I'm sure Vince McMahon himself, they think AJ is the best in the world right now. So if AJ loses to Drew, that's not going to hurt him at all. But like I said, AJ hits a phenomenal forearm on Matt Riddle. 1, 2, 3, he gets the pin. So then back live with the Miz and Morrison, they're interviewed about what happened on Miz TV earlier in the night. Charlie Caruso notes that they're planning to weaken Sheamus and Drew. They're just like their team, I guess you would say. It backfired. And then she asks, now what's your plan? Miz is he kind of blows her off, and he's just rattling off all these facts and in presenting a plan that him and Morrison are going to win, and they awkwardly walk off, and Charlie just kind of has this confused look on her face. But then back to the ring, we get Dana Brooke, and she's set to take on Reckoning, or Mia Yim. Reckoning was responsible for taking her and her and Mandy Rose out of the Survivor Series, and which led to, well, not Mandy Rose, that was actually Nia Jax, but she took out Dana Brooke when she was checking up on Mandy Rose, and then so now this is a little mini feud here. So then before this thing, Brooke, she slaps Ali, and then it's like, oh, okay, so now we have this match, I guess. But back live, Reckoning is in the ring, and she has a message for Brooke saying, in Retribution, we don't play games. If we have a problem, we annihilate it. So then we get Reckoning versus Dana Brooke, and Mia Yim is really good. I love Mia Yim. Dana Brooke, I've said it before. I've said it many times. She's not good. I don't know if she's actually getting better. I can't see improvement in her, and especially when matches are very short like this and there's interference and it's bullshit. But Dana Brooke breaks out of a hold, and she lands those 2 elbows that she does in the clothesline, and then she tries to do Ali, then jumps up on the apron. He tries to distract Brooke, and she gets a cartwheel shot in the corner, but it doesn't work. She rolls up Reckoning 1, 2, 3. So Reckoning loses here. And she actually lost her her mask very early on in this match. Not that was a long match, but it's kind of like, so like when Kane lost his mask, it's just obviously not as impactful, but it's like they all wear their masks, and not that like they ever take them off. So for her to lose her mask, we clearly see it's Mia Yim. Not that we didn't already know that, but it's like, if you want to keep kayfabe, kind of like, oh, okay. So that was a little bit, a little bit awkward. But then post-match, Ali's furious, and he says there's no failure in Retribution. So now maybe we're going to see something where she branches off, leaves Retribution, goes back to Mia Yim. That was my whole thing. And maybe with Keith Lee, then maybe, okay, now him and his wife can, not like there's some kind, not trying to say mix max challenge or anything like that, but like, maybe that would be cool to see them kind of interacting a little bit, see something like that. So we'll see. If that's the case, I would love to see Mia Yim in the women's division. Her against Asuka would be great matchups. Charlotte when she comes back, her and Shayna Baszler. We've seen it before, but it's on Monday Night Raw, so it's a little bit different. Shayna Baszler's not the unstoppable force, so Mia Yim might actually get a win. So if that's what they do, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But in backstage, Miz and Morrison congratulate AJ on his win. Morrison offers a peach pie because AJ is from Georgia. AJ accepts the offer to help them later tonight because he says that it would be a lot easier for him to beat Miz than Drew if Miz is able to cash in and win. AJ smiles and he holds up the pie and then almost says, that's not a pie. That's a cupcake because of how huge he is. And, so that was the joke again. The little jokes in there was kind of funny. AJ's like, what? Just like the way AJ's great. And then we get a replay of Drew pinning Orton to reclaim his WWE Championship. He's live next for an exclusive in-ring interview. But before that, we see Matt Riddle. He's pitching business ideas to MVP. He says his ideas are ridiculous and that he's glad Riddle lost. Riddle shoves MVP. And then MVP shoves Riddle. He pushes him in the face. So Riddle stands up, and then he goes off from because I gotta mention, this is too good. He was like, yeah, man, we're gonna do like a lawn mowing thing and get rid of your weeds. He's like, if you have weeds, just call me and my bros. We'll come over. You'll have no weed left. So obviously they do the stoner jokes, and it's fantastic. And then MVP gets pissed. That's when he shoves him. Riddle goes into serious mode, stands up, shoves him. But then Lashley comes out of nowhere, secures the Hurt Lock, and then he throws him down, and he's like, sorry, bro, or something like that, Lashley says. So this, to me, has got to be the United States Championship program. You got to put that belt on Matt Riddle. This is, hey, let's make this guy. You're not going to give him the WWE Championship yet, and that's completely fine. When you have guys like Drew, it's on the Fiend, who are like the height of popularity. It's understandable. That's what you want your main event to be. AJ Styles, again, up there as well. Keith Lee. Matt Riddle, I think, could be there in a year from now. I don't be surprised if he wins, 2022's Royal Rumble. So it is one of those things where this is the perfect feud for Matt Riddle to be in, and two legit guys, two legit former MMA guys. So I'm all for this feud if that's what they end up doing. And still in the back, we see Keith Lee and Sheamus. Further seeds are planned about Drew and Sheamus having each other's back later tonight. The Miz and Money in the Bank contract lurks as the sub storyline. So then back to the ring where Drew's interviewed. He's asked to reflect on beating Orton for the title and then losing to Roman at Survivor Series. And Drew says that sometimes you have to get knocked on your ass to find out what you're truly made of. He also told Roman Reigns that he's going to humble him, and that's exactly what he did. Drew says that Roman's confidence turned to frustration of fear because he knew he was unlike anyone he fought before because he was able to kick out of spear after spear, and Roman's never faced that before. And the Drew notes that the pair's paths will cross again and that Roman may have won the battle due to Jey Uso's interference, but he hasn't won the war. So the Drew is asked how he keeps his eyes on Styles with the Miz Money in the Bank contract looming, and Drew says that his match with AJ will be phenomenal and that the Money in the Bank contract is the only thing keeping Miz relevant. He tells him that he'll take the briefcase and shove it where the sun don't shine. So then Sheamus enters, and the pair take on Miz and Morrison after the break. So here we are, folks. Main event already. Miz and Morrison versus Drew McIntyre and Sheamus. And this was okay. I love John Morrison. I've made that clear as day, but he's obviously the bottom guy in this whole totem pole feud, if you want to include, AJ in here now. So all five guys, Morrison is way on the bottom, unfortunately, in WWE's eyes. But, Drew looked good in this thing, and Sheamus looked good too, really beating the shit out of the Miz. But then Sheamus was the one who was kind of like selling and trying to make the hot tag to Drew. Pretty much a good portion of this match, every time he tried to make a tag or something like that, like they would either, pull him back in their corner, they knock Drew off the apron or something like that. He was never able to make the tag. But at the end of this thing, and also a thing of note, AJ was on commentary, which played a big factor in this match. Drew and the Miz both tag in. Drew with a belly to belly from one side of the ring to the other, and he does the same for Morrison. And then a neck breaker to Miz now as Sheamus motions for a tag, but Morrison pulls him away and throws him over the barricade. Then back in the ring, AJ lands a phenomenal forearm on Drew, which results in a DQ. So you see Morrison, he got rid of Sheamus. They hit the phenomenal forearm. And so, or AJ hits a phenomenal forearm, and then you're just kind of like, what? It was like a bullshit ending. It was just like confusing. But then that's because AJ looks to the Miz. He's like, what are you doing, asshole? Cash in. Like, let's go. I just hit him with a phenomenal forearm. And then, he's all like, he grabs his briefcase. He's like, cash in. Morrison hits the Starship Pain. And then he's like, skull crushing finale. It's like, okay, let's get this thing cashed in. Let's get it cashed in. And then Drew sends Morrison flying, and then he lands a Claymore on to the Miz. So it took a little while for them to get everything going. So it gave Drew enough time to recover. And that was fine. It wasn't like, he buried their moves. But then you go to last Wednesday and you saw when Kenny Omega sold the DDT on the title for about 7 minutes. That is what is like, that to me, like, killed it. It's like, you know what I mean? That was just like, you don't sell something like that because he's probably going to kick out of the DDT in the match they have on Wednesday. So, see, that's how you do it. You sell for, 10, 15, 20 seconds. Now you're back up on your feet because, hey, like you said, he kicked out of spears. That would be like if you took one spear from Roman and laid there for an hour. You know what I mean? So, hey, that's the only problem I have with that segment. But we're not on Wednesday. We're here on Monday or Tuesday. But so Drew, like I said, he takes all the guys out, Claymore on the Miz. Then it's just AJ and Drew in the ring. And before Drew or AJ can do anything, almost grabs AJ. And then he's kind of like carrying him on his shoulder. And AJ's just yelling at him the whole time. This is why this is so great. This visual of like AJ Styles, who, when he's in the ring, is the best wrestler in the world. But he can be funny and you can laugh at himself because he knows he's short, almost is huge. He's holding him on his shoulder like a little kid. And he's like, if it wasn't for him, I would have kicked your ass. You're lucky almost was here. Like, put me down. I'm going to kick his ass. And, it's like the little guy syndrome, like, hold me back. And, so that was great. And I'm looking forward to this feud. It's going to be only a little short feud. Not going to be anything too long, too crazy. But the match at the pay-per-view at TLC should be fantastic. So I'm looking forward to it. So, guys, thank you so much for watching the review. And don't forget, follow us on Rope Break on Facebook, the OG Rope Break on Twitter, the original Rope Break on Instagram, and, of course, right here on YouTube for the home of the #1 podcast, the original Rope Break. So we will see you next time for NXT And we only have one more thing left to say, and that is